there, it's Kevin with Rogue Deck Builder here with this week's episode of the Tuesday Brewsday. Unfortunately, I'm having problems with freezing games on Arena. Probably have to uninstall Arena. Been testing it out all day trying to get it to work. As I wanted to get a video out showing the two decks that I'm playing. I have a best of one deck that I play with mono green elves, and I have a best of three deck that I currently play in standard, which I call Dimir Kickin. I think I have showcased both of these on the channel pre-rotation. So these are both kind of relics of elves, have a lot of Zendikar and Kaldheim mechanics in them, and then the Dimir Kickin is just the kicker mechanic from Zendikar, which I was pretty obsessed with. A few of the cards, I'll show that one in a second here. So neither of these decks, I would say, are going to be tier decks, but the good news about them is they do hold them their own. I'm also having problems bringing up the statistics today, so I don't know what Arena's problem is for today, but the server is just messy. But they both are above 50% win percentage. I don't know if it's that. It's just because I am a more skilled player, have more experience than the average Arena player, and therefore I'm, it's just outplaying certain opponents, or if these decks are legit. We'll have to wait and see. And have gotten, I think last season got pretty far with the Dimir Kickin. It was up to not quite up to Mythic, but I don't play Arena as much as I like to. I wish I had some more time to do so. And that same thing today with no gameplay with today is it's very, very tough right now with the freezing of games and whatnot. I spent a couple hours already trying to do it with no success. So anyway, let's get on to the deck techs here. So let's check out the best of one deck first. I haven't really made this for a best of two or a best of three. I'm sure it can, like no sideboard here, I'm sure it can be done. The problem is that we have a very hostile meta for creature-based decks because a lot of decks are able to throw in like the Meat Hook Massacres, or there are a lot of board wipes that are just super, super good right now in the field. So this is just kind of a fun little ElfBall deck. Every standard I try to do, if elf is a thing, I try to go back to the drawing board and try to make the best ElfBall possible. I've done it, throughout this since 2014, so we've been started this channel. If there has been an ElfBall type strategy in standard, I've tried to make it happen. So this is my go-to ElfBall strategy for the current standard season. So the first thing that you see is it does run this snow-covered kind of package, because we don't want to be running too much removal, but you need to be running some removal in best of ones. And so our go-to card is going to be Blizzard Brawl. This works very well in the deck because you're going to have snow-covered permanents. Often you'll have snow-covered permanents on turn number 2 and be able to cast Blizzard Brawl on turn number 2. And how that's done is through a Jaspera Sentinel and a Sculptor of Winter. So the Sculptor of Winter is a snow creature. The Jaspera Sentinel is going to be able to generate the mana off of the Sculptor of Winter coming down on turn number 2, and that way you can take care of like a problematic 1-drop or 2-drop. There are plenty of them in the formats that are kind of these must-answer 1-drop, 2-drops you need to get off the field, or otherwise they'll snowball out of control, and Blizzard Brawl allows us to kind of deal with that. So we do have some 1-drops in the form of Jaspera Sentinel. That's one of the better cards in the deck. It's going to add us a mana of any color if we have another card out, so it leads to some pretty cool like turn 2 plays with like a Jaspera Sentinel in it to an Elvish Warmaster on turn number 2, and then tap the Jaspera Sentinel and Elvish Warmaster to cast like another Blightblade or another Jaspera Sentinel, and then you get a token out of that, and you can follow it up with a turn 3 Circle of Dream Druids. Then you have a lot of mana on board. The Elvish Warmaster is just about ready to be able to give everything +2/+2, and you're going to be swinging down lethal very, very quickly. So that's our 1 and 2 drops. The reason I like the Tajuru Blightblade is this card's actually pretty good in the field at the moment because it trades with anything and has a lot of good synergy with the Blizzard Brawl. So that's what our 1-drops look like, is just this package. Elvish Warmaster is really the whole reason to be running this deck. It's going to be creating a lot of 1/1s. It's also going to have that finisher ability of 7 mana, give all else +2/+2 and Death Touch. So not much to talk about this, just that it's kind of our go-to card. Sculptor of Winter is another, basically just mana dork in here. It's a 2/2 adds to our snow count. Nice little bear effect. You're going to have, it's going to be untapping any of your lands, so it works. And the Tajuru Paragon is another cool card. As it for 2 mana, it's a 3/2, and if you actually spend some more mana into this sucker for the kicker, you're going to be able to find an elf off the top 6 cards of your library. I mean, all these cards are going to be able to. So it just has to share a creature type with it. So it's going to be basically everything in the deck. I even believe, does it share? Yeah, it shares with it does not share with the human druid here with the Augur of Autumn. It's going to hit everything else in the field. Then we have Realmwalker. This is one of the better cards in the deck because it helps us get cards off the top of our library. It's kind of our card advantage card. So it's got that built-in Rangers class all the way leveled up. As you can cast creatures of the chosen type, you're going to name elves. There's only one card in the entire deck that are two cards in the entire deck that it's not going to hit, which is going to be this Augur of Autumn. You could name Druid. The thing is, like, two of our mana dorks are actually rogues in this one, and I believe the other one actually, so we only have one other Druid, yeah, because the other one's a warrior. So you're definitely going to be naming with the first Realmwalker, you're going to be naming elf. Maybe after that, maybe you could name Druid, but yeah, name elf, you're going to be casting creatures off the top of your library. I decided to put the Augur of Autumn because once you have Realmwalker out, you do have the problem of getting into like some lands. Like one land off the top really screws this deck, so the Augur of Autumn can get that land off the top, and then it's got that secondary ability of being like the 5th and 6th Realmwalker. It isn't an elf, it's a human druid, but the upsides of these cards is quite good. We do also have a nice little spread of power. You have like a one power creatures, a 2 power creatures, 3 power, 2 power, 3 power. So it's going to get online quite easily with this Augur of Autumn. You can actually even activate the Faceless Haven to have another different power for this Coven ability to then start casting creatures off the top of your library. We're also going to play a 1 of Varis, Silverymoon Ranger. Typically, it's just for the Scry ability off of one of the dungeons to get a land off the bottom end. It's okay with the creating wolves if you do go through the dungeon, but mainly it is just you get some sort of value out of stuff coming out. It's not the best card in this deck. It's probably the worst card in the deck, but it is another elf that I think is worthwhile to put in the deck. The Circle of Dream Druids, this is the combo with the Elvish Warmaster. Let's just go what we call the ElfBall by creating a ton of mana and basically going through your entire deck or be able to, one-shot an opponent by generating enough mana. Circle of Dream Druid stays out of turn with like a Realmwalker or an Elvish Warmaster. You're going to get a ton of value out of this card. Next up is the Canopy Tactician. It's kind of our Lord ability in this deck. It's going to have all else +1/+1. Plus, it's going to be able to generate 3 green mana. Then we just run 21 lands. That's perfect for this deck. You don't flood too much. Everything is easily castable. There are, of course, a few other cards you could run in this deck. For some other finishers, you can run like a big the new 4/4 haster that you can pump up and it gives all your creatures, some buff. But I think that just going this ElfBall is kind of fun. Again, I don't expect this deck to be something that is tier, but it does match up quite well versus mono white, and it's also pretty decent. It's very good versus the kind of the mirror of the mono green, because I think that you're a jump ahead of the mono green. Oftentimes you'll be able to flood out your hand first, get like a Realmwalker out before some of their cards online, and you just overwhelm them. They don't have enough creature removal to really keep up with you. Same thing with mono white. Mono white, it tends to be that you do get to flood out before their removal package starts to get online, and then you can just overwhelm them. Where this deck does struggle is it's basically unwinnable versus dragons or the Esper turn, or not Esper turns, the Jeskai or the Dimir or Dimir. All the blue-red, any of the blue-red combo, there we go, that's the word I'm looking for, of the turns decks are going to be very, very tough, and is also, this deck is going to struggle versus any of those black sacrifice decks that are trying to get value off of exploiting creatures or, just trying to get a lot of, and then they run like the Meat Hook Massacre. That card really, really beats up this deck. So again, the sideboard could probably do something against those particular decks, like maybe splashing blue for some counter magic. I don't know. This is kind of a glass cannon type strategy, but I do like to theory craft. Where I'm still out in Magic the Gathering is I do prefer to just brew and then playing is secondary. So I'd like to kind of tune a deck the best as possible. So right now in Standard, we're still plagued with good stuff, meaning you're just going to be playing good cards. I'd like to see some changes in Standard. I think Goldspan Dragon is just way too high power level. And same thing with Alrund's Archive, or Alrund's Epiphany, not Alrund's Archive. Just the power level of those two cards they're just super, super strong in how the meta is formulated right now in Standard. So I don't know if that's something that Wizards is going to look at and say, okay, we need these cards out of the mix. But if I were to get rid of some cards, it would definitely be those two cards, and I think it would open the field wide open because of the turns. If you actually take all the turns-based decks or the dragons-based decks, it makes about 40% of the meta. It's a little misleading when you look at a lot of statistics. They kind of break down these decks and give have two distinguishing decks between the Esper or the Is It Dragons and the Is It Turns. Anyway, I'm rambling enough about Standard. That's a video for another day, which is a video series I do want to bring back, which actually is going to coincide with this next deck. So spoiler alert for hopefully tomorrow, we can get my Rogue Rant series going, and I'm going to rant about a mechanic that I think that they messed up completely from Zendikar Rising. So there is that deck. On it to the next deck this is my go-to best of 3. And this is a really fun deck. It is a grindy deck and actually does surprisingly well in the meta. I don't think you go up against a matchup that you're like, oh, this matchup's unwinnable. Some of like the blue and white kind of Drago strategies are very, very tough to beat. But other than that, like the Dragons deck is slightly unfavorable, but it's not something that's unwinnable. I did have it tuned once upon a time to actually play against that, but the problem with the sideboard, if you go a sideboard versus either Esper or versus Is It Dragons or Is It Turns, is that your sideboard is just horrible against every other matchup because you're going to be playing a lot of counter magic, you're going to be playing a lot of disruption to take out their hand, and then it's just really, really bad against other tier decks. So I've kind of tuned this against the full meta. This is trying to make the most out of the kicker mechanic, and the card that I like the most out of this is the Roost of Drakes. So Roost of Drakes seems like a pretty innocuous card. It's just 1 mana for an enchantment. Whenever you kick a spell, you get a 2/2 blue Drake creature token, and it does have kicker for 3. So it's not going to give you Drakes for a little bit till you can get your kicker online, but there is quite a bit of kicker cards in this mix. The first one being the Bloodchief's Thirst. Very good against mono white, mono green. It scales incredibly well. Once your Roost of Drakes are out, then it'll leave back a 2/2. What I like about the Roost of Drakes is such a renewable resource. It's something that can actually compete against those Meat Hook Massacre decks or those board wipe decks, as it gives you a residual Drakes every time you continue to cast kicker spells. Then we have the Into the Roil, which is very good. It's going to give you card advantage, it's going to give you a Drake back, it's going to bounce things. This card's actually quite strong in the field because bouncing is almost as good as removal right now in Standard. So bouncing a permanent, drawing a card, getting a Drake, very, very powerful. So the other card that I built this deck around was the Sea Gate Stormcaller. And going for my rant for tomorrow, the spoiler, it's going to be talking about how I don't see how the Wizard of the Coast designed a mythic for a set and then designed kind of the 2 rares that would work the most with this mythic, and they botched it big time with having them being more than the converted mana cost 2. So where Sea Gate Stormcaller gets its power from, it's just a strictly worse Snapcaster Mage in every sense of it. It doesn't have flash. You have to have a card in hand. You've got to dedicate. So basically, instants become sorcery speed with the Sea Gate Stormcaller. But where this card shines is it says with mana value 2 or less. So it's these, if you kick it, that doesn't change the mana value. And so that's where Into the Roil and Bloodchief's Thirst, when you kick them, they still copy. And it gets really, really neat when you end up getting a ton of mana with this, and you pump in 7 mana to the Sea Gate Stormcaller, kick it, and are able to even kick like an Into the Roil. And then you can just bounce a ton of permanents, draw a ton of cards, and super, super fun card. Super juicy card, but unfortunately there isn't the best synergies at the moment in Standard with the Sea Gate Stormcaller. There are some good ones in this deck for when we go over the sideboard cards like Duress. I would really like a flexible counter spell that had 2 modes. It was 2 mana. Unfortunately, we don't. We have the 3 mana return spell with Divide by 0, but it's 3. So it kind of Sea Gate Stormcaller. I think they just kind of missed the mark on this when they're designing the kicker mechanic for the inscriptions, and that's what the video about tomorrow will be. So lastly, it's going to be the Suspicious Stowaway. I'm probably going to get rid of this card because it's not performing the way that I wanted it to, and I think I'm going to go back to the 3/4 that allows you to cast cards from your graveyard, because I think there's enough cards in the your graveyard like Considers and stuff that you can start to get some value out of. And you do, one of the problems with this deck is it tends to peter off, and some of the draw big cards, they don't really synergize early, and so it's rough for me to run cards like Memory Deluge in the deck. So Suspicious Stowaway was in here to just loot cards. It can actually get rid of the Skyclave Shade that we're going to look at here in a second, or it can just get certain matchups. It can get rid of like redundant removal spells. So this one probably will go because it's actually not performing well in the field. So This is kind of the flex slot that I'm still messing with. At one point, it was Planeswalkers. I've ran both the Spider Planeswalker plus the Liliana Planeswalker for kind of the bigger card draw. Liliana does super well against dragons, but it really struggles versus the rest of the meta. So yeah, this card's probably going to go, so keep that in mind for this particular card. Now, I ran a higher split. At one point, it was like a 3-2 or a 4-3 with Infernal Grasp and Power Word Kill, but between Bloodchief's Thirst, Infernal Grasp, Power Word Kill, and in the Hagra Maulings, I think that's enough removal spells. You do have the Into the Roil as well, and you do have like the Sea Gate Stormcaller. But depending on the meta, this could be where the Suspicious Stowaway gets cut for like another Power Word Kill or another Infernal Grasp. There could be a few other cards that could go in this slot as well. Skyclave Shade's kind of neat too. It's got the kicker ability. It's got that residual for Roost of Drakes. Another card that I had like a 1 of or a 2 of, I probably will cut back down. But I was going up against a lot of decks that you did want a threat. So you wanted a constant threat to keep coming back, and the Skyclave Shade definitely plays that role. It's a 3-1 for 2 early, and then when you kick it, so it's 5 mana for a 5/3, and you basically get back a Drake later on versus some of these control decks. So it's something that can continue to create pressure and is miserable for some decks to take care of. And it's something you can actually get off the Coralhelm Chronicler. Another card that I wanted to make it work, this is a card that when you kick a spell, you loot, and it actually, when it comes into the battlefield, you reveal the top 5 cards of your library, and you can get something with kicker. So you want as many kicker cards as possible to try to hit with this card, and so that's why the Sea Gate Stormcallers are really cool, because you rarely cast a Sea Gate Stormcaller on its kicked mode. It happens, but mainly it's something you can actually, it gives you more things you can grab with the Coralhelm Chronicler. Another kicker is pretty good is Jace Mirror Mage. This is 3 mana for a 4 loyalty planeswalker, so it oftentimes can just draw you 2 cards, so it's just like a divination-ish type card. But if it does stick around, like if you hit lands with this card, you can actually eke out a lot of card advantage, and once again, it is a kicker card that can work off Roost of Drakes. I've actually been quite impressed with the Jace Mirror Mage. This card can actually put in a lot of work for card advantage. Then we have the Hagra Mauling. I still don't want to. I don't know if I want to go into something else here. I do like the flexibility of the removal. Instant speed removal is something that we do need. That's more flexible than like Power Word Killer, Infernal Grasp. There's a lot of lands out there that the power or the animate land, the changeling land, the Power Word Kill doesn't hit. Power Word Kill doesn't hit a lot of the dragons. There's actually a lot of angels out there. So having Hagra Mauling and Infernal Grasp and Bloodchief's Thirst is a pretty good flexibility to kind of take care of your needs for the kind of the meta. This is pretty self-explanatory for the lands. We got 6 islands, 5 swamps for the Clearwater Pathways, the 4 Shipwreck Marsh, and I'm running 3 Field of Ruins because one of the cards that is very difficult for us is the Hall of Giants, where you do need to kill it because it will just start, beating you down. You have to chump block too much. So Field of Ruin is a good answer for that. Lots of man lands in the format at the moment, so Field of Ruin is a good go-to card. Sideboard, this sideboard has been tweaked so many times. I would just say that you want to tweak it based upon your meta. Duresses are super good, especially off of a Sea Gate Stormcaller. This is a really great card where you go turn 3, you rip 2 cards out of their hand, and it's oftentimes you can get the 2 necessary cards, and then you can just overwhelm them. Go Blank is super good in this format as instead of Duresser as a 2 mana one, the check for traps you could run. But it doesn't have as good of synergy with the Sea Gate Stormcaller. The Go Blank is super, super good because it exiles graveyards, and graveyards are big in this format. I'm running a Trips on the Siege more Witch. This is a pretty good card with the creating 1/1s. I mainly bring this in versus other creature-based decks because it gives me enough chump blockers to really get going. So 3/2 for 3 mana. It creates a pest every time you cast a instant or sorcery spell. I'm running 3 Siphon Insights. This might go back up to 4 because it does have great synergy with Sedgemoor Witch. The main reason for this was the sideboard plan is 3 was perfect because when what ends up happening with a lot of the matchups is like 2 Power Word Kills come out, the Coralhelm Chroniclers come out, the Into the Roils come out, and then Dress, Go Blank, Sedgemoor Witches come out, and it only gives you room for 3 Siphon Insights. So that's when you're creating a sideboard, you want to look at those scenarios and matchups of, you don't want something like, oh, well, I have 4 of these, okay, which one don't I put in? So that's been the scenario of why I went back down to 3, but Siphon Insight's actually super good in certain matchups. It's kind of terrible versus any of the Izzets because you don't want to give them back resources, so a lot of them run like bounce spells. You don't want to like cast one of their cards and they bounce it and then they get it back to their hand to cast against you later. So pretty cool card with the flashback ability. It's got the synergy with the Sea Gate Stormcaller as well. Even if you flashback it, it can still work with the Sea Gate Stormcaller because the mana value is still 2 when it works with the Sea Gate Stormcaller. Last but not least, I've added the Meathook Massacre. This is just, we have a residual reoccurring cards like Skyclave Shade or the Roost of Drakes. So Meathook Massacre wiping the board early, then we can get back our stuff late is fine. I've had some other kicker cards in here. I did have kind of this combo where I could get back all my creatures eventually and really grind out my opponent, but they're so bad early on. And I think that the Roost of Drakes is just enough residual pressure for the meta at the moment. So again, I'll try to find some time to play some games. I had, like I said, had some going. I'm having some either whatever's making Arena crash. Need to figure it out before I can actually do some gameplay. But it is on my to-do list with people have been asking for brews. I have a lot of cards I do want to mess around with. There's some fun cards now that I've been drafting Crimson Vow. I'm like, wow, this would be a fun card to theory craft with. Again, my goal, I'm kind of setting the bar low. I am not going to try to make like a Pro Tour or Mythics or all this type of stuff. I'm just going to focus on brewing and having fun with brews and trying to tune them as much as humanly possible. I think that is where I get the most enjoyment out of Magic the Gathering, is just to just theory craft. Like I said, just really, really look at a mechanic. And in this case, it was Roost of Drakes and the Sea Gate Stormcaller and see, hey, how can I actually make this work? And as you can see on my other lists here, I mean, I've tried it with other, variants here, like, oh, well, what if we put green in here with this Marasa Sproutling and with this Roost of Drakes, Sea Gate Stormcaller, works with this Inscription of Abundance in it, and, we still get this value out of Considers and whatnot, and so it really just, gets the good old brewing juices going, and it's kind of fun. At that point to see what we can come up with really trying to utilize like a combo of cards. So yeah, I've got a lot more of them. I think I've tried like every color combination for this one. This was the Reflections. Okay, some cards rotated and I was working on this, on how to make this sucker work. So yeah. Yep, that's what we have for you. I'll be showcasing brews. I apologize for kind of lack of content and whatnot. It is very, very tough running a store. What ended up happening here is I kind of get my magic fill being a store owner. One of the things as a store owner, you got to think as yourself as kind of like a bartender. People come in to actually socialize with you. So oftentimes I'm the designated +1. So people need a person for a board game. They need me to play a game with them on Magic. We need another person in draft, that type of stuff. I end up doing a lot of that. And so it just kind of runs me ragged and I don't have as much time as I would like to then be like, oh, I'm going to, sit down and theory craft on MTG or Arena. So Magic still does have a huge place in my heart. I wouldn't have a store without it. I don't know where I'd be in life without it. I'm very thankful that I did make this channel and did, hit up to, we were close to 35,000 subscribers at one point and, hitting thousands of views. And I have let the channel slipped and it's, really, it was because of greener pastures. So don't feel sorry for me for that reason. I did make some decisions on where I wanted to focus stuff, but I think for nostalgia's sake, it will be fun to go back to the brewing roots of the good old Rogue Deck Builder days. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm looking forward to all your comments in the comment section below. If you're a new subscriber, an old school subscriber, leave me a comment. Tell me what you're up to. Like, I've made a lot of friends throughout this kind of Magic the Gathering experience, and it's been just a pleasure. It's just been a pleasure to be part of this community. Anyway, this has been Kevin with the Rogue Deck Builder. Thanks for watching.